Hi folks, and Camila Foch. Today I want to talk about brake fluid, an extremely important service item, vital for safety and yet often neglected. So let me explain. In terms of safety and bike control, I think we can all agree that brakes are one of the most important components of your motorcycle, right? Probably next to tires. And yet, brake fluid is one of those components that is very often neglected because it's not that obvious, it's not out there, especially on these bikes where the reservoirs are completely enclosed and you cannot see it. And forgetting about brake fluid can actually lead to catastrophic failures. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page, let me go through the main basic components of a braking system. Front and back, they're pretty much the same. I'll focus on the front because it's easier to explain, but it's basically the same thing at the back with a few small changes. The main thing obviously is the brake lever, right? That's the one that you use all the time. You press on the brake lever, that pushes a piston that goes on the master cylinder, right? That is your reservoir. After that, when you press on that lever, it pushes that piston, and basically what it does is sends brake fluid down the brake hoses or brake lines, call it whatever, down to a caliper, right? This is out of a car, but the exact same principle applies. Inside the caliper, you'll have X amount of pistons, right? That's why normally you hear the 2-piston caliper, 3, 4, whatever amount of pistons it has on a caliper. And basically the brake fluid comes in and pushes with the same amount of force that you're putting on your brake lever, right? And it pushes a piston like this, right? So basically what it does, like I said, brake fluid pushes this piston out and the piston pushes on the brake pad. The brake pad then pushes on the disc itself, as you can see here, right? And that force and friction will work to slow down the disc and of course slow down the bike, right? That is the very basic principle. It works for pretty much everything, car, bike, whatever it uses actually in hydraulic system. So in very simple terms, that is all there is to it. In cars, you will have brake boosters and stuff like that, right? To generate even more power, right? Transmitting from the pedal, but that's another conversation. For bikes, it is actually a little bit more simple. Now, of course, on modern bikes, you will have an ABS system in between, right? That it will come in play in some situations, in some it won't, right? So if you're braking normally, right, and the system doesn't detect a wheel spin or anything like that, the pressure goes directly. If it does detect any type of slip situation, whatever, yes, the pump will actually actuate and regulate that pressure that goes directly to the caliper. When the ABS pump activates, if it is very aggressive, you actually feel it on the brake lever, right? If it is quick and just a second, right, you probably won't feel it because it's just a split second, right? It's very quick, especially on modern bikes. But if it is a hard panic brake situation, right, you will definitely feel it on the lever, right? Kind of pulsing, right? Because you can feel the whole ABS pump actually releasing and re-grabbing the brake pads. So now that you understand the basic components of a braking system, let me wash my hands and talk about brake fluid. Since the late 90s, pretty much every vehicle out there actually uses .4 for brake fluid. And if you have an older bike or an older car that actually calls for .3, don't worry about it. .4 is absolutely backwards compatible and you can use it perfectly fine, no problem whatsoever. Having said that, never do it the other way around. Never put .3 on a .4 bike or any modern vehicle. Now, why hydraulics? Because of course fluid is non-compressible, right? Technically speaking, yes, if you put an immense amount of force, you can compress a little bit fluids, but that's just getting too technical. But for the most part, fluid is actually incompressible and it provides a much more consistent and better feel, right? Not to mention power, right, for the braking system. While I'm no chemist, let me give you at least the very basics of .3 and .4. Both are based out of glycol ether, which is hygroscopic. What does that mean? Is that it actually pulls moisture out of the air into the fluid, right? And that moisture comes into the braking system through micropores on the rubber lines, rubber gasket, rubber seals, all are gonna adjust, right? All those components are throughout all the system. And this is where .3 and .4 completely separate from each other. .4 has a much higher boiling point. It's 230 degrees Celsius or 440 something Fahrenheit. It also has a higher viscosity. That is all due to a component that .4 has, which is borate ester. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'll put it on the screen. And of course, that higher boiling point allows newer braking systems with bikes that go faster and faster and faster to actually continue to perform perfectly fine. Now, like I said, glycol is actually hygroscopic, which means that it will absorb those moisture droplets into the fluid. So over time, that moisture turns, of course, into water and mixes with the fluid, and then, of course, eventually starts lowering down that boiling point. So at only 3.7% of water content in the brake fluid, that would actually lower down the boiling point from 230 for .4 all the way down to 155, which is 311 Fahrenheit. So again, think about that, 3.7% of water content on your brake fluid, that actually reduces the performance of your brake system by quite a bit. So I think now you start to get where I'm coming from and why it's so important to actually replace the brake fluid quite often, right? And it's because as you start pulling that moisture, right, and turns into water right inside your system, that water will start to affect components like your brake pistons, right? This will kind of rust and start pitting. Doesn't matter if it is aluminum or steel, they all corrode, right, with water. So your calipers, all the rubber seals inside the calipers will start to break down, right, and obviously leak fluid. So it greatly affects the performance and the lifespan of your braking system. Now, not only that, but remember that I told you that it actually reduces the boiling point of your brake fluid, right? So what happens when you actually boil the fluid, right? Because of course, and you know this, when you're braking, right, that friction from the brake pad to the brake disc, it creates a lot of heat. So with that heat, it transfers through the calipers into the rubber lines, and it actually heats up the whole fluid. So when you lower that boiling point and you generate all this heat, that fluid, that water, right, it evaporates and it turns into a gas eventually, right? And gas, guess what? It is compressible, right? So that turns into you pressing the brake lever and feeling all spongy because now you're just compressing air. You're not pushing the brake pads anymore. It's just compressing air. That's why sometimes you can actually pump and then get something out of it, right? But eventually, and this is the catastrophic failure, when you have a lot of water content on the brake fluid and you have a lot of heat, that could actually turn into a vapor lock. So no brakes whatsoever. You press on the brake lever and the whole bike just goes straight, no problem whatsoever, right? It just keeps going and it's an absolute disaster. Of course, like I mentioned, right, the rust and everything can make the calipers to seize, again, the pistons not to move or the fluid to leak, and again, of course, you do lose the braking power, which is also a disaster, but the vapor locking is one of the most fatal things that you can have on a braking system. Time to wash my hands again. So now you might be thinking, if glycol is actually hygroscopic and pulls moisture out of the air into the fluid, why the heck do they use it for brake fluid where you don't want actual moisture? Well, great question, and it's actually the next point of my little thought process. If you think about it, if you use a component that is actually hydrophobic, that actually repels water, right? You'll say, oh, that's what I want on my brake fluid, right? No water. Well, actually, water will get into your braking system no matter what. Like I said, through those micro pores on the rubber lines, the rubber gaskets, even the brake reservoirs, moisture will get in no matter what. So if you have a component that is actually hydrophobic, that rejects the water, well, due to gravity, the water will just go down. You know, when you mix water and oil, well, oil is actually hydrophobic. They don't mix together. So if you use something like that, the water will just pull down and it will go down to the bottom of the system. Where's the bottom of your system? Your calipers. So imagine that. The calipers, which is the worst place to have water because obviously it is the place that generates the most heat, that would be the first thing that actually boils and you're done. Water, as you know, boils at 100 degrees, right? So if it's separated, it's an absolute disaster. The other thing is, so far we have been talking about heat, but also what happens when it's actually very cold. I've ridden motorcycles in 0 degrees temperature, right, or 32 Fahrenheit. Water freezes at that temperature. Glycol doesn't, right? Glycol, I think, only freezes at minus 40 Fahrenheit, which is also minus 40 Celsius. Very convenient to remember, but it's basically impossible, right? You will never run a motorcycle at that type of temperatures. It's just non-viable, right? And actually, it doesn't even freeze. It actually turns into a gel. So there you go. That's exactly why they use glycol. Being hygroscopic and absorbing that water mixture, it distributes that moisture throughout all the fluid, right? Let's say that you have, I don't know, 100 milliliters or something like that of brake fluid in the whole system. So those water droplets will distribute along the whole thing instead of pooling at the bottom, right? So it's actually a benefit, but it is the main thing where that's why you have to have that in mind, and you have to make sure that you replace the brake fluid in time. And this is why I'm making this whole video, so you understand what exactly is going on and why you should definitely pay a lot of attention on your services and how often you should change actually the brake fluid. Now, if you pay attention to your owner's manual and you follow the service intervals, you know that normally manufacturers recommend replacing the brake fluid every 2 years. Those 2 years are pretty much a guideline and an estimate out of an average and whatever, right? But there's a million different factors that can change how often you should actually change your brake fluid. If you do it every 2 years, I think that's pretty safe, right? As a guideline, it obviously errs on the safer side, right? Sometimes you could be replacing pretty good brake fluid every 2 years and you don't need it. For the cost, I will obviously recommend that you do it every 2 years. Now, there's, like I said, a bunch of factors that determine how often you need to do that replacement. Stuff like your environment, right? It is completely different if you live in the middle of the desert in Utah, right? Very dry environment, there's not a lot of moisture in the air. Or if you live here in Ireland, where it's probably 90% of humidity all the time, right? There's a lot of moisture out in the air. So that alone, your environment will determine how often you should change your brake fluid. The other thing, of course, is how you use your bike. If it is a track day bike, right, most likely your brake fluid change is going to be every, whatever, 2 races, if not every 1 race or every couple of months, right? Where if you only take the bike out for a spin here and there and you're just Sunday cruising, right, you probably extend the life a little bit more because you're not giving all those heat cycles, right, on the brake fluid. Now, even if your bike is sitting on a garage on a very dry environment, heated garage or whatever, if you're very fancy, you still have to replace that brake fluid, because by just sitting there, it is actually oxidating, it's aging, right? Then that actually turns into a lot of degradation, especially on rubber lines, that kind of stuff, right? And you can actually see it on your brake fluid that it starts to turn black a little bit, right? It starts to turn a little bit dark. And I'll show you on the K100 that has that exactly same situation, right? Where I don't use the bike as much, but by just sitting there with very, very old rubber lines, they're probably the original ones to the bike. Yes, I do need to replace them at some point. But like I said, over time, it will degrade. The whole fluid will be contaminated, so it is definitely something that you have to bear in mind. For the most part, if you stick to the 2-year interval replacements, you'll be absolutely fine and there's no need to complicate things anymore. Again, it's a guideline, but the whole point of the video is that more often than not, people actually neglect the brake fluid and they don't have that in mind for the actual regular services. So for that, and to be absolutely precise on when you should actually replace the brake fluid, forgetting about the 2-year rule, you can have a tool like this, right? This is very inexpensive, I'll show you. It's a very simple tool, right? You can get it out of Amazon, it's actually quite cheap. And it will actually show you the water content on your brake fluid. So you basically open up your brake reservoir, dip this in, and it will actually tell you the water content on your brake fluid. So a tool like this, it will tell you that between 1 and 2% water content on your brake fluid, it's okay. More than that, 3 and more than 4, it's absolutely horrendous, and then you should actually replace the brake fluid immediately. Out of the box, if you actually grab brand new brake fluid and you dip this in, it won't say 0, because again, the whole thing is sitting on a plastic container, and unless it's absolutely brand new, just out of the factory, chances are that it already has some type of water content in it already. So 1% will be absolutely fine. So let's go out and try a few examples. Using the old K100 as an example, like I mentioned, this has very old rubber hoses and I don't use the bike as much. And of course, when you're dealing with brake fluid, always wear gloves, right? If brake fluid is good enough to remove paint, it can't be good for your skin, right? So that is pretty obvious. All right, so as I expected, that brake fluid is actually looking quite bad, right? It's pretty black and everything. Like I mentioned, most likely due to brake hoses. This brake fluid is actually not too old. It's probably not on the 2-year mark. So now let's grab our tool, press the button on the top until you see the first green light, dunk it in, and boy oh boy, this is pretty bad. So more than 3%. So there you go. That is a perfect example, right? Obviously, you have all the condition, the brake fluid looking horrible, and then the tool confirming that is actually quite bad. Very quickly, let's test how the whole thing measures out of the bottle. This is not brand new, but it's not at all either. And no, of course, I'm not using the GS acetate for this type of operations, brake fluid after all. So, like I said, press the button, dunk it in. And like I mentioned before, you know, that type of 1%, less than 1% is to be expected. I don't know if you can see that. But that is a perfect result. That is perfectly good brake fluid. Just an example out of the bottle, right? It will most likely have a little bit of water content anyways. So now you have all the basic understanding on how the braking system works, the importance of braking fluid, and why you should replace it every 2 years at least, if not whenever it needs it. And lastly, I want to touch base on a topic that is a little bit controversial, especially on Facebook, the forums, and all that kind of jazz, is what happens when you want to do a brake flush and you have an ABS system in between. Obviously, if the ABS pump is not active, there is a little bit of fluid, right, in the whole ABS unit, right, that is not opening when you're doing the classic brake flush by, you know, pressing the brake lever, opening up the brake plate at the caliper, right, and letting all the old fluid flush out basically, right? But you still have a little bit on the ABS pump. In these bikes, if you have the scan tool or the computer, you can actually activate the ABS pump to actually circulate and then flush whatever little fluid is there. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary, right? If you're at home, you don't have the scan tool or the computer, right, and you want to do a brake fluid flush, you can absolutely do it. And that 5 to 10% that is on the ABS pump, if you keep, let's say, the regular flush once a year, once every 2 years, that 5 to 10% is probably negligible in the whole scheme of the whole fluid mixing up with the brand new fluid, right? I can almost guarantee that if you keep up with the regular flushes, that will be 1 to 2% of, you know, moisture content on the brake fluid. It's absolutely no panic whatsoever. You can definitely run your bike safely and without any concerns. So again, a lot of people on the forums or Facebook will create a lot of panic about flushing the ABS pump and whatever, right? It's not as critical if you keep up with the whole system. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it's a very interesting topic, and if at least I can create a little bit of awareness on people that never thought about the brake fluid or completely forgot about it, like on my K100, right? You know, do what I say, know what I do, basically. That is the whole point of the video, to create that awareness, right? And you go out and check out the tool. It's actually absolutely inexpensive, or you make sure that if you take your bike to a shop, that you do keep up with those regular maintenances and you flush that brake fluid once every 1 or 2 years, right? So thank you very much for watching. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you folks on the next one. Thanks.